what does that do for like the enforceability of your contract? Like if you're if you're consulting the law firm of ChatGPT, then like who represents you when if that actually does get escalated to any kind of like contract breach or anything like that, right? Can you think of maybe another thing that small business owners in the beginning of their business like tend to either trip up on or not want to invest in just yet or get kind of like scared off by? For me, like paying lawyers to write the contract and write them in our best interest has always been worth the money. So like to me, so necessary. But I can understand like where people are like, oof, I'm just getting started. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't like, oh, I don't know. Kiss my aesthetics, branding, marketing, entrepreneurship. Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. I'm so excited to have our guest on today. We call her Legal Gabby because we have a Gabby on our team. So we have Legal Gabby on the pod today. Welcome to the podcast.
I love that. Yeah, two Gabbies. But thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome working with you guys. So getting to chat about this stuff is going to be great too.
Oh my goodness. We're going to get into your whole story, how we work together. I think this is a great time of year to really reconsider all your contracts and processes and all the like things that make the business run, those like necessary evils, as we like to call them, the stuff that's behind the scenes. But talk to us about like where you went to law school, how you started, how you ended up where you're at, where you're now working with small business owners all over.
Yeah, so I went to law school in San Diego at California Western. I wanted to stay there. I absolutely loved California, but everyone wants to be a lawyer in California. And it was an incredibly competitive market. But I'm from Arizona, and my twin sister, who's also a lawyer, actually was living in Phoenix, and she said, it's not so bad here. And I decided to come live here for a year, see if I like it, and I've fallen in love with Scottsdale. So I stayed here. My first job was working with a real estate law firm, and it wasn't even my plan. I knew I wanted to do transactional work. Real estate was not really at the forefront of my mind, but I fell in love with it. Just being able to service a client from the start of their project till the end and any follow-up stuff. We also serviced a lot of businesses, but the main crux was real estate. And a funny kind of side story is as I was becoming, getting into my first few years of being a lawyer, I also became a spin instructor on the side to have
Love.
like some creative outlet. And with that, I wanted to teach more and I wanted more flexibility. And I thought, the only way I'm going to get the flexibility in a law firm is if I start my own.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally started my own firm so I could do whatever I wanted basically and create my own schedule, which works out so well now because so many of my clients are entrepreneurs and creatives. And I feel like I get them so much because I am one myself. And my business partner, Lauren, is the same way. She wants space to dictate how she runs her life. She's about to have her third kid. So we definitely understand the balance that entrepreneurs need in their lives because we kind of implement that in our own day-to-day ourselves.
No, that couldn't be more true. It's so true for me. I grew up in San Diego. I don't know if we ever talked about that, but I live here now in Cardiff. But the lifestyle is everything. I went and talked to a whole group of high schoolers that were taking some design challenges that I had written. And someone asked me, like, is it hard being your own boss? And I said, yeah, like it's hard, but I wouldn't trade it for anything because it just gives you that flexibility and the lifestyle that I want. Like if I'm tired, I can take a nap. If I'm inspired, I can stay up till 2 a.m. if I want to. Like it's just the ultimate kind of freedom. And so I think having someone on your team that like understands that is a huge start. But at what point did you decide, okay, I'm going to start my own firm? What year was that? And what kind of are your core of your service offerings? Like what are you guys doing the most on like a week to week basis?
Well, Lauren and I each had our own firms in 2019, I think up until 2023. That's when it was actually really funny. We were friends through my twin sister because they went to law school together. And we went to get lunch and kind of just compare experiences. And she said to me, she's like, would you want to just work together? Because we were both kind of on our own little islands
Mm-hmm.
and missing that collaboration that you get when you work with someone else. So I think it was by 2024, we officially merged our law firms. And Lauren really worked with a lot more entrepreneurs than I had. I worked more with the real estate developers, but the needs of a transaction really apply no matter what industry you're in.
Mm-hmm.
The fun part about the entrepreneurs is we had so much in common with them. So it was really at that point that I hit the ground running more so with working with small business owners. And since then, we're very, very word of mouth because we like the people we work with and we trust their references. So one business owner to the next is kind of how we build what we are doing now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I think like again that the partnership of it and like knowing that you guys have both had your own practices and then we're able to kind of mishmash them together is really useful to know because then you're getting of course like diverse experiences but word of mouth I mean I couldn't agree more. We're right there with you. I've got to imagine that your guys' business takes a little bit of like an almost unconventional course because like people you don't really know when people are gonna need you right like you
Yeah.
have contracts but then you also have like things that happen and like contracts to enforce. And that's exactly what our kind of working relationship has been so far this year, without saying too many details. But I want to go to kind of like the small business owner that's just getting started. And I want to think about the person who maybe got some bad advice where they said, well, why would you pay a lawyer? You can just get ChatGPT to write your contract. Because I have heard that a lot. And
Yeah.
I can imagine as a lawyer, you're going like, oh no. But why is that a terrible idea?
So we love AI just like the next person. We're not saying not to use AI. It is incredibly helpful. But the thing that ChatGPT cannot do is to look at what's missing from the contract. You can have it, you can say, okay, this is what I want, and they'll write it based on what you're giving it.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know what's missing. That is, and I'll tell you, we have seen so many contracts come to us and someone say, hey, someone sent this to me. Can you just give it a look over? We know it's ChatGPT instantly. We're like, well,
Really?
it doesn't have the governing state. It's missing how you guys are going to handle a dispute. There's no non disparagement clause.
Mm,
I wish, like so many things, AI could replace it, but it won't. And I think that at the beginning, when we had this huge wave of artificial intelligence, everyone got a little nervous. And the more I see it, I'm like, please, please stop asking it to write your contract. There's small things it can absolutely help people with. But
sure.
again, if you don't know how to tell it what to look for, it's not going to be able to give you what you need. But yeah, Lauren and I have a lot of fun talking about it. And there's tools, there's softwares that can help every industry, including our own. It can't replace the attorney itself. We're really hoping people are being mindful because the amount of things we're seeing that are getting people in trouble is growing because of it.
Yeah, and then what does that do for like the enforceability of your contract? Like if you're if you're consulting the law firm of ChatGPT, then like what who represents you when if that actually does get escalated to any kind of like contract breach or anything like that, right? Can you think of maybe another thing that small business owners in the beginning of their business like tend to either trip up on or not want to invest in just yet or get kind of like scared off by? For me, like paying lawyers to write the contract and write them in our best interest has always been worth the money. So like to me, so necessary. But I can understand like where people are like, oof, I'm just getting started. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't like, oh, I don't know. What do you think about all that?
That is the conversation we have every time where people have this hesitance, which we get as a small business ourselves. How much do you want to invest up front versus
Right.
how much do you want to do yourself? And the thing I say, so let's pretend someone walks in like, I want to start a business. I don't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing you do is form your company. 99.9% of the time, you're going to form an LLC. Corporations are out. No one needs them. And a lot of times people think they do. You don't. LLC is the way to go. Forming the LLC, can you go online and do it yourself? Totally. But my favorite thing is someone will come, they'll form it, and there's issues. And now I'm fixing it instead of using the 10 minutes I can now form an LLC in.
Sure.
So, company formation before anything else. The reason being, too, when you start transacting for your business, you want that blanket of protection. That's what the LLC is.
Mm-hmm.
You want all your contracts signed under your LLC. You want your money going into LLC. So, that's honestly step one. Step two is getting your EIN,
Mm-hmm.
which is your employee identification number, so you can open the bank account for your LLC. Those two things, it's literally like my step one, step two with a client.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's
Mm-hmm.
contracts. And honestly, if you want to go online and try to figure out how to form an LLC and get your EIN and save a couple $100, I really do believe in how much you value your time. Can you use those
Totally.
couple hours to invest in yourself and do something else and pay someone who knows how to do it? The contract part is the scary part
Mm-hmm.
where You need a contract for people you're going to hire. You need a contract for people you're going to provide the service to.
Hmm.
So that's really the first like main intro to being a business owner.
Let's talk about that service agreement contracts because we've gone through mine many times. And obviously, things change very rapidly. And some feedback I got from pushback from a recent project was that the contract, a lot of when it comes down to like branding and graphic design, is about like intellectual property and ownership and perpetuity and rights and licensing and all of these big scary words. But talk to me about some of those like base like terminology to know. Like what do we need to know? Who owns what? Why do they own what they own? What does that mean? And then also like as the creative person, how do you retain your either autonomy or opportunity to use that work? Should you, want to share it on social media, whatever.
Yeah, this is one of our favorite things to point out to our creative clients because let's pretend you're the service provider and you are the one creating these things and you want to be able to retain your own ideas. You want to be able to put it in your portfolio. So there's two ways you can do it. You can own the IP. So the intellectual property is basically this intangible product that you're developing. Some of it's tangible as well. Let's pretend you're a photographer and
Mhm.
the photographs themselves are tangible.
Mhm.
But you can either give the ownership to the client, which is the most common because people want to pay for ownership.
Sure.
But then we say, okay, you own the intellectual property, but you are going to license me the right to use these for what's called a limited license, which means I can use it for my portfolio.
Mhm.
Now, that limitation stops them from selling your photographs to someone else, which, why would you want to? But it gives that client that reassurance.
Mhm.
There is another alternative where the service provider actually keeps ownership of everything and says, but I'm going to license this to you, which I don't think it makes as much sense for a photographer, but for someone who's
Sure.
creating, a platform or a software of some kind, you definitely own it and you are licensing it to them. They don't get to own it. They don't get to keep it. They don't get to redistribute it. They just have a right or a license to use it in this limited way that now you're providing them. So, depending on the industry, the service provider will either be the licensor or the licensee.
Yeah, that's something I'm really glad that we have in our contract because it's allows me to make sure that like it can live in our portfolio. I can talk about it on the podcast. I can share it on social media. We also have like a photo video release where like the behind the scenes content relating to your project that I don't necessarily have to request client approval for that to be able to share it because again, most of my work is coming through social media. And so that is sometimes something that gets redlined in the contract. And I had a great conversation with a friend recently where I was kind of recapping the drama that we've had. And she goes, "Oh, I make my contract terms like so ridiculous because if they don't redline something, that means that tells me that they didn't read it." I was
Oh
like,
my gosh.
that's a very interesting strategy. And so she
That
goes,
is
"Yeah, my terms are,"
interesting.
she goes, "My terms are insane." She goes, "Because I always want them to redline. I always want them to look at it and come back at me and say, like, okay, this I want changed. This feels ridiculous, whatever." And I was like, think about it that way. What do you think of that approach? Pretty ballsy.
I don't love it. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. I've seen people get scared away from a contract and then not want to work with
Sure.
the person. So,
Sure.
and also, this might sound bad. It's not your problem if they didn't read it. So, you don't need
Totally.
to make it so egregious to ensure that they're reading the terms. My approach to negotiation is doing the most reasonable, mutually beneficial thing,
Sure.
walking to the table and saying, I already wanted to start this relationship collaboratively and mutually beneficial.
Mhm.
So while I'll make sure my client is protected, I don't like to disadvantage the other side.
Yeah, of course.
So
Of course.
even so, for example, let's pretend we're doing a contract where you're the service provider and you're owning the rights to your stuff. We include in there a provision called client materials. And we even say, hey, you own the rights to the things you brought to
Yeah,
us too. So
totally.
imagine your client getting this agreement and thinking, oh my gosh, this person is so aggressive. How are they going to feel about the business relationship? So, while I definitely understand the intention and there's good argument there, I think going in with your contract and just your approach with your client, do it mutually beneficial.
Of course. And also as the business owner, I think understand the terms that you're outlining. Like the number of times I've read my contract and reread my contract and read it again and been like, okay, what does this phrasing actually really mean? I think it's useful to know, but it's also like such a nice like tool to have in your back pocket that when you're talking to the client, I think I literally said this on the call where I said, great, if you have questions about the contract, first of all, those needed to be negotiated before the contract was signed. And secondly, I'm so happy to connect you with my lawyer because I did not write the contract and I'm not going to speak on it. But like, if you would like to talk to the person that wrote it, by all means, you know what I mean? And to kind
Yeah.
of have that in my back pocket and know that that was an option felt so great because I didn't want to misspeak or overpromise or say something or like, oh yeah, we can do that for you. And those like were not the terms that you agreed to. But has that happened with clients before where they're like, "Yeah, here, go talk to my problem child."
Oh, it happens all the time. And if we drafted the contract like we did for you, we are more than happy to pick up that call or write that email.
Sure.
It's when someone says, "Hey, I have a dispute. Can you look at the contract and tell me how I can handle it?" And I'm like, "Well, this contract that you've never had an attorney review is not looking
Yeah.
good."
Right.
So,
It looks like a piece of Swiss cheese.
yeah,
And
or
it
the biggest thing, honestly, is that the contracts are usually silent on the issue they're bringing to us. I had
mm,
you would be surprised how much this happens. 2 friends start a business together.
all the
They
time.
yeah, they draft a contract through ChatGPT or an online source, or honestly, even more common, they don't have a contract, but let's pretend they do.
Mhm.
And they say, "We're not getting along. We want out." And I'm like, "You don't have a buyout provision." Okay, so now we have to negotiate it.
Mhm.
Lauren and my favorite provision in a partnership is the buyout.
Mhm.
'Cause it's the most overlooked, and it's the one that's never in there. And ChatGPT honestly isn't gonna put it in there for you, and you're not gonna know to put it in. Most people don't think about it.
Right.
So,
Well, it's like having a prenup, right? Like it's you're protecting yourself and you're protecting your effort and your interest in the situation. I've got clients right now that have business partnerships that are just on a handshake and a wink and I'm like, you're making me nervous.
yeah.
Like that's a great way to get taken advantage of. But I mean, it comes full circle and actually Lauren and I were kicking back podcast ideas and she was going to come on originally to talk about like how to protect yourself as a woman with a business and like the impact of that. And right now, we're all in the big Secret Lives of Mormon Wives drama, right? And now Jesse and the guy that looks like a Keebler elf, like now they're going to divorce, but their prenup was never signed. And it's just like, oh my God, you're going to lose so much money to this guy and he sucks. But
It's the worst.
talk to me about that. And especially as like, we're all women business owners. Like women are outpacing men on every freaking metric. What can you do to like make sure that you're protected, even if you have your own business in your name? Like, the community property thing is interesting. I know it varies from state to state. What are your kind of top of the dome thoughts?
So the biggest thing, especially if you don't have a prenuptial agreement, honestly, Lauren and I have been exploring a lot more about postnuptial agreements. You can
Interesting.
still enter into this after the marriage because a lot of times before you get married, you don't have a business, you don't think you need it.
You don't have any assets.
Yeah, you're like, "We don't need this." So once you're married, you're starting a business, it is community property. Arizona and California, for example, if you start the business during the marriage without any contract, your spouse can potentially have rights to half. Something I always think about with pre and postnuptial agreements is a lot of people say, we don't want a paper to decide what's going to happen. I'm like, it's either you guys decide or the government. Why would you
Yeah.
let the government decide? They're going to
Yeah.
split 50-50 usually. So for a postnuptial agreement, you can say anything with respect to my business, if we were to divorce, goes to me, or it doesn't have to be 100%. You can make it all. But
Mhm.
being able to make that decision, I think, is so respectful to yourself, to your business, and to your partner. Um,
Mhm.
I couldn't be more in favor of pre and postnuptial agreements. I think it's to me, it's a really big sign of respect to your partner to say,
Absolutely.
if we were ever going to go through something, we want the decision to have been made while we are crazy about each other,
Yes.
not at the end.
No, I think that makes a ton of sense, right? And it's kind of all of this is relationship based, right? Like even though like yes, we're going by the rule of law and yes, it's business, like your relationship with your business partner and your relationship with your partner and then your relationship with your team. Like back
Yeah.
to that point of like making contracts with employees and handbooks and understandings and like all of that follow through. I'm very lucky and blessed in that I've got one employee and she's amazing and that's good for me for right now, but
It's
it was
amazing.
that whole process was so overwhelming because I'm just like, oh my gosh, I've never hired someone before, like this is really intimidating, but knowing that she's got access to all the documents that she needs and I've got them for what I need, but there's so much more, that goes into all of that. I think people get also hung up on the difference between like the 1099 and the contractor. So let's circle on that one, because that I think is confusing to a lot of people, or 1099 contractor versus a W-2 employee. But yeah, where do you feel like people get the most stuck in that situation?
So, something I want people to understand too is it is so normal to start a business and feel this way to say, I don't know how to hire someone.
Mhm.
Like, no one started a business knowing how to do this. So,
Mhm.
it's a great question to have. Now, 99% of the time, the first person you hire is going to be a 1099, which is the same thing as an independent contractor. The reason being is you probably don't need them full time. You don't want to control everything they do. Most common reason is people don't want to deal with having to take their taxes out for them, any benefits they might have to owe, all those things. So, yeah, if you start your business, you need some help. The 1099/independent contractor is the most common way to go. The problem is someone's business starts going for a while, they start hiring more and more. They have 5 people working for them full time and they plan their schedule, they tell them what to do, they have policies and procedures. It's really easy to argue that those are employees, which is a W-2 and not a 1099. The government does not like that. They will
Mhm.
You can get penalized for misclassifying an employee. It usually comes
Because
up.
why? Because why? Because the government believes that you owe them benefits?
Exactly. It believes you owe
Okay.
them if you're going to have that much control and they're basically devoted to you or dedicated to you.
Mhm.
Now we look at the relationship differently and what the employer owes the employee. The misclassification and the penalties come up when a disgruntled employee reports you. That's how it's going to happen.
Mhm.
It's way more common in California than anywhere else because California is very protective of employees.
Mhm.
So it happens honestly, the most common is in therapy practices, actually. We have a lot of clients.
Really?
Yeah, because they're very, very strict on making them employees if there's something called an ABC test, and basically, I won't bore you with all the details, but one prong of the test is if they provide the same service that you provide, we don't even
Uh-huh.
care how many hours they're there, they're an employee.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, I wanna give her 5 hours a week.
Mhm.
I don't wanna have to take taxes out.
Mhm.
So we help people kind of structure it in a way where they can make it a 1099, but there's so many precautions you have to take.
Yeah, because I ran into that with Madison, who's my designer, because I'm a designer. And so I brought her on to help me do design work. And first she started at like 10 hours a week, and then she was 20 hours a week. And then I had so much work for her. I was like, oh my God, I could really like use her. I really think that this makes sense. And she was freelancing at the time. And she's like, I don't really like marketing myself. Like, I'd rather just work for you full time. I was like, okay, let me see if I can make it work. But then it was definitely tricky, because then like on the org chart, right? Like you can't, and this is not, isn't this the drama with Uber? Of like them
Oh, yeah.
being 1099s versus W-2s, of like if there's some other rule, and maybe I'm wrong, that I feel like I heard, like if you're deriving like a certain amount of your income from that one thing, like if that's your whole job is that you do that for one company, then like you kind of need to be an employee.
Yeah, because it now shows that you are being controlled by that employer.
Sure.
Control is
How
like
does
the
that
biggest part.
How does that change with like remote work though? Because like my team is fully remote, and then we have like unlimited PTO. Like just get your jobs done. I don't care when you want to work. Like work at 2 in the afternoon, work at 2 in the morning. Doesn't bother me. Like just get your jobs done. Which I think is very much like a new wave approach to, we're like very anti 9 to 5 of
Yeah.
like the structure of that. But how does that change? And like do you see that there's a third kind of classification, or like what are your predictions for the future of like gig economy versus employment
It's
economy?
interesting because we're basically seeing W-2. We used to see the other way where the concern was
Yeah,
independent contractors are being treated by like employees. Now
sure.
employees are being treated like freelance. But that isn't a
Interesting.
negative for the legal relationship. It's actually just, I think,
Interesting.
the environments that we're creating for people to have more enjoyment and balance and apparently more productivity. Like we're seeing a lot of bigger companies say unlimited PTO, like
Yeah,
W-2 employees can have as much. I love
yeah.
it. I think it's great. But there's not really a concern about misclassifying the other way.
Interesting. What are some things in your world that either you're noticing as trends? I think 2026 has been off to a rough start for us. And I know that some of my friends I talk to that own businesses are also like, they're like, something is going on in the universe. Like people are being insane. But I'm
Yeah.
wondering, you're noticing patterns or like things that have come up even in the last year, 2 years that you either didn't anticipate or you're noticing is just like, wow, we really have a lot of clients dealing with XYZ and maybe something that you're keeping your eye on in the future.
I am one of the weirdest things we're noticing is non-payment. People saying, "You know what? I just don't want to pay you. We have a
Oh, my parents are
contract. I owe you money, but I just ghost." And I will tell you, I think it's this new sense of entitlement and this new sense of I can kind of do what I want. Frankly, since COVID, it's trickled into even the business world and the legal world where people say, this is what's so hard for attorneys. We can write this beautiful contract and someone can say, I know I see it in paper, okay? But I'm going to just not listen. And I feel for my clients when they say, I had it signed, but they're not paying. So the way that we're trying to get our clients to protect themselves the most is things like secure payment methods that you can store, provisions that say you are not allowed to charge back. We can even show this to Square and say that you signed an agreement that said you will not ask for a refund. Like we're kind of going overboard in the most protective way to get our clients paid.
That happened to my sister. She's a wedding
Really?
planner. She planned someone's entire wedding. They had grievances that were outrageous from our POV, but they just went to their credit card and just disputed it on their credit card, and she got all that money sucked right out of her bank account. Even though she showed a signed contract, she showed correspondence, she had all of her homework done. Like brutal,
It's brutal.
brutal, brutal. So then what happens then? Does it everything just get escalated to like small claims court?
Yeah. And then, well, for small claims court, there's a threshold on how much you can sue for. So the really
Mm,
challenging part is if you want to hire a lawyer to kind of recoup those fees, how much are you now paying
yeah,
an attorney? So here's the biggest reason we try to tell people be proactive, not reactive. Paying an attorney to draft your contract is significantly less expensive than paying an attorney to sue someone.
mhm,
We're talking about a couple $1,000s versus tens of thousands of dollars.
mhm.
So this reactive versus proactive is something we try to stress a bunch. But when they do try to do a credit card dispute, like I was saying, one of the best provisions is the no chargeback
Mm,
and having some safeguards on your payment. Something else, and I know you and I have visited this with clients before, is payment plans don't mean you do not owe me all the money if you want out. A payment plan was
correct.
me just saying, you owe me the total today, but I'm going to let you pay it over 10 months. It
Over
doesn't
time.
mean when you terminate that you don't owe the remaining payment.
Mhm.
And a lot of contracts aren't clear on that. So to be really, really clear that payment is accelerated, you now owe me the remainder if you do want to terminate. Because so many service providers are doing so much of the work up front. They're blocking out that time. They can't take another client
Completely.
on.
And a lot of it is conceptual. Like a lot of it is like direction and social media plans and like things that you're going to be reaping the benefits of months and months and months and months and months after what we've worked on. So, yeah, just because you're getting a deliverable in month 1 of a 6-month contract doesn't mean that that's also not work that's materializing like over the time of our partnership. I think also it goes on my recent thesis, which is just I don't think people are embarrassed of being unprofessional anymore.
It's 100% true.
And I know like I say that as I'm like sweaty from my workout with like my baseball cap on and no makeup, like but I'm recording my own show. Like who
It,
cares?
because there's this beautiful pro to being able to be ourselves more in our work,
Mhm.
but there's always a negative side to every positive. And the negative is now that people have no sense of being respectful. It's crazy. I'm like, you
Mm-mm.
can't just not pay someone who performed all this work for you.
Well, because the social consequences aren't there. And
Yeah,
like you see it a mirror weirdly in dating of like
I
if
was just
you
thinking
only
that.
dated people that you knew in your community, you couldn't be an asshole because you'd have to see that person at the grocery store, at your workout class, whatever. You would like your reputation was on the line. Versus now, I think we all work with people and like we have such this weird relationship with like it's wonderful that we can work remote. I love working with clients from all over, but like when things go awry, there's just like a lot less on the line because they're
Yeah,
like, oh, whatever, I'll just block you and like never think of you again. You know what I mean? Like, and the same happens with dating, like, where because it's like these apps and it just feels endless choices and like you would have never crossed over with that person in the first place and you're not ever going to cross over with them again. It's like we've now given a free pass for just like awful behavior.
it's so true. It's so true. And I think I'm a big believer in it's going to come back. Like, I hate the word
Oh,
karma, but it is karma.
yep,
Like that person that
yep.
you might have ghosted on a dating app. What if they're now, oh my God, I had no idea that you work at the company that I'm applying for. You know what I
Yes,
mean? Like, this is
yes.
going to happen. So I do think it's funny too, the way we give advice to our clients sometimes, we can talk to them about the legalese till we're blue in the face.
Mhm.
But even this morning, I had a call with a client who is going through a very shaky business breakup. And I said to her, I said, you need to talk to your business partner as if all you want is respect for each other. You want this
Yeah,
to end really friendly because you both
right,
put in so much together. And
right.
she was so taken aback. I think she wanted me to get really aggressive. She's like, how are we gonna, stop
Screw
all
'em.
this? I said, no, 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 this is not the way to go. I said,
Mm-mm.
you are going to be on like your P's and Q's. And it's going to be, you're going to, but
Mhm.
this is self-protection. I wasn't saying
Yeah.
this, you know what I mean? I'm like, I don't want her to ever be able to speak badly of you. And then when we ask for what's called a non-disparagement in the agreement, which is a provision that says, you can't talk shit about me. That's literally what that provision is.
Mhm,
Well, now it's mutual and we'll both agree to it. Do people follow it
mhm.
every time? I don't know. But like
Right.
doing it yourself is going to protect you. So I
Yeah.
tell people, I'm like, don't fall for it. Don't, meet them at that level because it will protect you in the future if you don't.
Well, that was part of the drama with the Secret Lives, like, divorce rumors that were spreading was that one of the terms that he countered with is that she's not allowed to go on any podcasts.
It's
And she
crazy.
basically said, "Haha, yeah, right." And it's just like, she's booked for Call Her Daddy, like, tomorrow. You know what I
Oh
mean?
my
Like,
gosh.
that's crazy, right? So it's like, yeah, if you can come at it and I think at the end of the day, like, nobody wants to be in legal hot water with anyone. It's uncomfortable, it's distracting, it's you, like, self-doubt yourself, there's all this, like, imposter syndrome, but, like, being a reasonable person is always your first best bet.
Yeah.
And I think especially with some of the projects that you've been able to help us on of like helping to figure out a solution, it's like had they come to me and done XYZ, I would be so happy to get this done reasonably. But it's
Yeah.
like if they're going to escalate to an unreasonable place, like I need to protect myself too. So like I'm not going to just get bullied into doing what someone wants just because it benefits them. And I think that that's why you have these agreements in the first place, right? Like this is why they exist. Like no one wants to have to use it, but you'll be really glad you did. Just like nobody wants to pay for car insurance, but when you get in an
Yeah.
accident, you're like real happy that you had insurance.
Exactly. Like the agreements aren't the most fun pieces of information. They are the
No.
worst case scenario. I would
Right.
love for everyone to go into business with their best friend and be like, we're
Totally.
gonna go great. I just had a girl who, two women who were working together. They were friends when it started, okay? And one of them had spent hundreds of hours working before the contract was signed. Once we find and I was like, "Oh my god, wait, you've already started work and now you're asking me to get the contract done?" She goes, "I know it's a
Backwards.
little reversed, right?" I said, "Sure is." They were not able to get to an agreement and they're fighting over like 20K right now. I said, "You should have never started work." You
No.
it is so much better to invest a little bit of time, a little bit of consideration and a little bit